So Baruch Hashem, we're back together again. I just came in about an hour and a half ago from Chutz La'aretz. So I am a bit exhausted because I never sleep on planes. But Baruch Hashem. There was a lot of abotzes Torah in Chutz La'aretz, but it's always a pleasure and a simcha and a schus to come back to Chaverim, Makshivim, and our steady Shiurim. Today's Shiur is dedicated L'ilui Nishmas, Harav Immanuel ben Chaim. Tonight is the Yortzeit, fourth Yortzeit. Chanukah b'sholom al mishkovay should be a Meretz Yosef for his beautiful family. And it goes without saying that the topic tonight will be about Ner Chanukah. Our previous Shiur was about Chanukah, and we discussed primarily Mokum Hadloka, Zman Hadloka, and today we will talk about Oifen HaHadloka. So Chazal say, Mrs. Chanukah, Ner Ish Ubeisoi. Every family lights one candle. Hamahadrin, Ner Kol Echod V'Yechod. Hamahadrin min Hamahadrin, Moise V'Hoylech. Yeshoimrim Poiches V'Hoylech. So there are three different tracks regarding Ner Chanukah, Mahadrin and Mahadrin and Mahadrin. And the essence, the focus of today's Shiur is to understand the different Hidurim regarding Ner Chanukah. So many Achronim contrast the minig that the Ramo brings, which is our minig, with Divrei HaRambam. So there's a discussion in the Rishonim whether the Mahadrin Mina Mahadrin Moise V'Hoylech adapt both Hidurim, Ner Kol Echod V'Yechod, plus Moise V'Hoylech, or it is one of the two, but they don't go together. Either Ner Kol Echod V'Yechod or Moise V'Hoylech, but the two don't go together. So Kosav HaRambam, Perek Daled Alocha Aleph, Kama Neiros Madlik B'Chanukah. Mitzvosa, Shei Kol Bayis HaBayis Madlik Ner Echod, Bein Shoyu Anshe Bayis Merubim, Bein Sheloi Hayabo Ela Adam Achad. The fundamental mitzvah is Kol Bayis VeBayis Madlik Ner Echod, and it doesn't matter at all how many people live in this home. Hamahadar is a mitzvah, Madlik Neros Keminyan Anshe HaBayis. Ner Kol Echad V'Achad, Bein Enoshim V'Bein Oshim. So it is clear in the Rambam, Hamahadar, Ner Kol Echad V'Yechod, doesn't mean that each and every member of the family lights a candle, but rather Rosh HaBayis, the one that lights one, lights all the others. Madlik Neros Keminyan Anshe Beisoy, Ner Kol Echad V'Yechod. V'hamayadar Yoiser al Zeh. Mahadrin Mina Mahadrin, V'oiser Mitzvah Mina Muvchar, Madlik Ner L'Kol Echad B'Layla Harishon, U'Moise V'Hoylech B'Chol Layla B'Layla Ner Echad. Madlik Ner L'Kol Echad. So the Rambam says we put together both minhagim. The first night, Ner Kol Echad V'Yechod, and Moisef V'Hoylech. According to Tosfos Shabbos Chof Aleph, no. Mahadrin Mina Mahadrin, don't light Ner Kol Echad V'Yechod. And the reasoning of Tosfos is, if we want to indicate by the number of candles, the number of neiros, which night it is. Second night, 2 neiros. 8th night, 8 neiros. If we also light L'Kol Echad V'Yechod, that'll cause total confusion. And a person sees 6 candles at the window. He doesn't know, is it the 6th night? Or maybe there are 6 people living in the house. And that is why Tosfos says either Ner Kol Echad V'Yechod or Moise V'Hoylech. The Rambam clearly says, Laila Rishon Madlik Ner Kol Echad V'Moise V'Hoylech. Kosav Aramot Min Tov Reish Ayin Aleph Siv Beis. Let's start with the Shulchan Aruch. Kama Neiros Madlik. בלילה ראשון מדליק אחד, מכאן ואילך מויסה והולך אחד בכל לילה, עד שבלילה אחרון יהיו שמונה. אפילו אם רבים בני הבייס לא ידליקו יותר. Chanukah follows Tosfos. The Ramo follows Rambam. And this is a very uncommon phenomena. Because of the entirety of Shulchan Aruch, the Beis Yosef always follows the footsteps of the Rambam, and that is the Masoros of Svarad. And the Ramo always follows Tosfos and the Rosh, Gedolei Ashkenaz, the Rishonim, and this is an exception. So the Beis Yosef says, first night 1, second night 2, third night 3, Mahadrim and a Mahadrim skips Mahadrim. They don't go together. V'yesh oimrim, and now I'm reading the Ramo, the kol echad mebnei abayis yadlik, v'chein eminik poshut. V'yezaru, liton kol echad v'yechad neroise b'makom yuchad, kedei sheheker kamen neroise madliken. So the Ramo wants to solve the problem of confusion, and he says, if each of the family members lights in a different window or a different place, and it is obvious how many people lit these candles, and people will understand which are the Ner L'Kol Echad V'Echad and which are the Moisev V'Hoilech. But fundamentally, the Ramo follows the footsteps of the Rambam, while the Mechaber paskins in accordance to Tosfos, and that is a Gevaldige Chiddush. But the question that many ask, if the Ramo does follow the Rambam, and that is a combination of Mahadran and Mahadran Mina Mahadran, but there's a huge difference between the Rambam and the Ramo. The Rambam writes, Madlek Neiros Keminyan Anshe Beisoi. It is only one that lights all the candles, and according to the Ramo, he clearly says, Yesh oimrim de kol echod men bnei habayis yadlek. And there is a very famous brisker Rav on the Rambam and the Ramo. Ufarani tachas kapes raglav. The brisker Rav, needless to say, it sounds ridiculous if I'm going to be masped the brisker Rav, but he was one of the most original Gedolei Yisrael in the later generations, and wherever he says anything, it's always genius. But I so strongly disagree with what he says on this Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch, even though it definitely is a spark of genius. So this Brisker Rav has a mahalach, and he says that Rambam and the Ramo l'shitos, from where? From far, far away, from Hilchas Mila. You got to be a Brisker Rav to connect Hilchas Mila to Hilchas Chanukah. So what's the story? Shabbos Kuf Lamed Gimel. Hamalas atinoik, kol hazman shelo piresh choizer al tzitzin she'ein ma'akven es hamila. Im piresh, einoi choizer al tzitzin she'ein ma'akven es hamila. So even people that don't know the details of Mila, but the mitzvah of Mila is to remove the orla, which is in English called the foreskin, but why would that be an nafkamina? We know the orla. If a person removed most of the orla, but some of it is still attached, that is what Chazal defines. Tzitzin she'ein ma'akven es amila. Because by mitzvah mila, as in many other halachas in Torah, we say ruboi kekuloi, and if you removed most of the orla, b'di'evetz it's a mila ksheira. But lachatchila, you got to remove it all. As long as the person, the moyal, is still engaged, he didn't put away the sakin shel mila, he didn't say mazel tov to the avia ben. As long as he is still engaged, he should remove all the tzitzim b'sheim akvanas amila. Make sure that you leave nothing there. Im piresh, if he finished his job, einoi choizer al tzitzin she'ein ma'akvanas amila. And there's a machlokes Rambam and the Tur. The Rambam writes in Perik Daled Halacha Beis, Im piresh, einoi choizer al tzitzin she'ein ma'akvanas amila. And the Rambam doesn't say we're dealing with Hilchos Shabbos. Rambam is mashma even in the middle of the week. Because in the Gemara, it is not clear. All the other Rishonim say we're dealing with Hilchos Shabbos. If it's the middle of the week, of course, remove everything. Afar Pisha Piresh. So most of the Rishonim interpret the sugya, including the Tur and Siman Reish Samach Daled. We're dealing with the Moelas Malan Shabbos. As long as you're still engaged in the Mila Bizmana Doiche Shabbos Bo'oifen Shalichatchila. You don't need to minimize removing most of the order to minimize Chilul Shabbos. Mila Bizmana Doiche Shabbos. But if you finish the Mila, subjectively, from a subjective point of view, so from now on it's just Hidur mitzvah. Hidur mitzvah einoi doiche Shabbos. That's the opinion of Rav Rishonim, including the Tur and Siman Reish Samach Daled. But in the Rambam is mashma that this din, Piresh, einoi choizer al tzitzin she'ein ma'akvan asamila, it's not about Shabbos. This din applies in middle of the week as well. So the Beis HaLevi explains, and he's the grandfather of the Brisker Rov. What is the machlokes between Rambam and Tur? It's a fundamental machlokes and the din of Hidur mitzvah. The Rambam maintains, after you finish the mitzvah, you can no longer add on Hidur mitzvah. Hidur mitzvah is only relevant b'shas kiyum mitzvah. The gather of Hidur mitzvah is lekayem et mitzvah b'shlemuta ubehidura. But after you finish the mitzvah, you could no longer add on Hidur mitzvah. Hidur mitzvah is b'shas kiyum mitzvah. And that is why the Rambam is mefarish, this sugya has nothing to do with Chilul Shabbos. If the Moel, from his subjective point of view, finished his job, he's packing up, and then his assistant said, Reb Moel, didn't you see? You left Tzitzin She'eh Me'akvan Asamili. You didn't remove the entire orla. And the Moel has a look and he says, you're right, but I finished. Because you can't add on Hidur mitzvah after you finish the mitzvah. The Ramo in Reish Samach Daled follows in the footsteps of all of the other Rishonim, and the Ramo says, no, we're dealing with a Chilul Shabbos problem. Because if you finish the Mila, it's only Hidur mitzvah, and Hidur mitzvah is not Doiche Shabbos. But in the middle of the week, of course you remove everything. So the Ramo maintains that even after you finish the mitzvah, you still could do the Hidur mitzvah. And that is the machlokes by Chanukah, Rambam v'Ramo l'shitosam. According to the Rambam, if one person was madlik nerish beisoi, all the other neighbors are Hidur mitzvah. Another person can't do Hidur because he didn't do the Ikar mitzvah. And Hidur must come together with the Ikar mitzvah. Rambam l'shitosai. And that's why the same person, madlik konaneres communion shabeisoi. The Ramo l'shitosai, even you're in a finished mitzvah, you still could add on the Hidur later. And that's why the Ramo says, no problem. If many people will light the many neiros of Hidur, it doesn't need to be the same person. That's the brisker of the Mahalach. And why do I disagree? First of all, I disagree with the entire Mahalach that if you're Merkayim, you finish the mitzvah, you can't add on Hidur mitzvah. And I wrote about this at great length in my Svarim in various different Minchas Oshar Torah, Minchas Oshar Moyadim. And it is clear to me, even after you finish the mitzvah, you still could add on Hidur mitzvah. But I think the Hidurim of Ner Chanukah have nothing to do with Hidur mitzvah in any other sugya. So the fundamental source of the concept of Hidur mitzvahs in Shabbos Kuf Lamed Gimel, Zeh Keli V'Anveu, Hisnora Fon of B'mitzvahs, Shoifa Noah, Tzitzis Noah, Sefer Torah Noah. You need to beautify Cheftze the mitzvah. Why is it in Shabbos Kuf Lamed Gimel? That is the sugya of Tzitzin Sheyeh Miyakven Samila. And this is a bit confusing. The Hidur mitzvah of Tzitzin Sheyeh Miyakven Samila, every bar das, every sensible person understands, it's not about beauty in the eyes of the beholder. It has nothing to do with a beautiful shofar, a beautiful tzitzis, and a beautiful sukkah, and a beautiful sefer Torah. There is no such a thing as a beautiful milah. Rabbeinu HaKadosh lo yistakel b'milosoi. The Hidur mitzvah of Tzitzin Sheyeh Miyakven is a Hidur in Shleimus HaMaisa. Don't rely on Ruboy Kikuloi. Remove the entire Orla. The way I see it, the nature of this Hidur is like mitzvah boy yoisem b'shluchoi. Do it b'shleimus. It is similar to Toises twice in Shas, Sukkah Lamed Ches, Broches Chof Aleph Amid Beis. Toises says, Afar pi sheshomea ka'oina, and a person could be yoitze when somebody else benches, when somebody else davens, and he listens in, but it's better daven yourself. Sometimes Hidur is not about beauty. It is not about looks. Hidur is also about shleimus ha'maisa. Be mekayim a mitzvah b'shleimus. Don't try to get away with the minimum. But the Hidur of Ner Chanukah, I think, is a totally different concept. If this would be Hidur mitzvah, like all the other sources of Hidur mitzvah, how could one make a brocha on Hidur mitzvah? Hamahadrin shemadlik ner kol echad v'yechad, each member of the family makes a brocha. If all were already yotze, you never make a brocha on Hidur mitzvah. If you made a brocha on one esrig, and then somebody brings you a far more beautiful esrig, you don't make another brocha. You never make a brocha on Hidur mitzvah. Tzitzin Sheyeh Miyakven Samila, im chayzer aleim, you don't make a brocha. And in Ner Chanukah you make a brocha. Ner Chanukah is also different in nature than any other Hidur. All the other sources of Hidur mitzvah is to be mekayim the very same mitzvah in a more beautiful way or in a more shleimisdika way. A more beautiful esrig, a more beautiful sefer Torah. Shleimus ha'maisa, mitzvah bo yoisem b'shluchoi. Daven yourself and don't be yoitzu with another. But by Ner Chanukah, it's the same mitzvah again and again and again. So it is of a totally different nature than Hidur mitzvah. So to me it is clear, Ner Chanukah is unique. Ve'ein doim aloi. You know, I dealt so much with Gidrei HaMitzvahs. I have a sefer on Klolei HaMitzvahs, Mechazoshe Klolei HaMitzvahs. Ner Chanukah is the only mitzvah in which Chazal lechatchila were metaken 3 different tracks. And that is all Tekonas Chazal, unlike all the other Hidur mitzvahs, which is just do it better. Here Chazal were metaken lechatchila. Ner Shabesoi is for simple people. That's for everybody. Somebody that wants to be frumer, he wants to go that extra mile. Chazal say, there's another track. Ner kol echad v'yechad. And if you want to be super, then we suggest, track number 3. It's like, what is it called? As a little kid, I was in the subways in New York. There's the express and there's the local, the slow train, costs less, or first class, second class, third class. I just came from America. There's coach, there's business class. El Al no longer has first class, but by Ner Chanukah, there's coach, business class, and real for the super people, first class. So Ner Chanukah is totally different. It is not called Hidur mitzvah. It is mahadrin. It is about the people, not about the chefza, the mitzvah. Because the neiros are all the same neiros. Instead of doing one ner, you do 10, you do 15. Mahadrin and mahadrin, the last that have 36 neiros. So I think Ner Chanukah, the Hidur of Ner Chanukah, has nothing to do with Hidur mitzvah, and therefore it has nothing to do with Mila. It has nothing to do with the Machloikes Rambam and Tur regarding Tzitzis Shiyeh Mi'akven Mila. But I do think that the Rambam and the Ramo L'shitos not so far away, not from Hilchas Mila, but from Hilchas Chanukah Gufo. And Sachakol, we need to move not from Orachaim Tov Reish Ayin Aleph to Yerodei Reish Samach Daled, from Orachaim Tov Reish Ayin Aleph to Orachaim Tov Reish Ayin Zayin. 6 simonim, not that far away. What is the Mechloikes Rambam in Ramo the way I understand it? Starts with a very fundamental question about the nature of Hadlukas Ner Chanukah. What do Chazal mean when they say Ner Ish Ubeisoi? Is mitzvahs Chanukah like all of the other mitzvahs of Seder Hayom, Shabbos, and Moed? Mitzvahs Chanukah rests upon the individual, like all of the other mitzvahs of Moedim or Shabbos. Kiddush v'Havdolah is upon each and every individual. One could be moitzi others, but everyone is chayiv l'kadesh u'lahavdol. Every Jew is chayiv b'matzah v'b'moror. Every Jew is chayiv b'sukkah v'b'lulav. Same goes for Ner Chanukah. Each and every one is chayiv l'hadlik Ner Chanukah. But the fundamental takana of Ner Isha Beisoy means one could be moitzi all of the others. Ke'ein shomea ka'oina. Ke'ein shlichus. And Ner Isha Beisoy means that you don't need to light yourself. You could be yoitze for another person lighting for you. Or maybe Ner Isha Beisoy means it's not upon the individual at all. It's on the bias. And Ner Chanukah is different than all the other mitzvahs of Shabbos, Chag, v'Moed, whether the Yoraisa or the Rabbanon. Matzah, Mora, Sipi, Yetzias, Messiah, Sukkah, Lulav are Menatoira. Lulav Menat only the first day. The other days is the Rabbanon. Mikra Megillah is a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. Dalet Koises is a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. But the common denominator of all these mitzvahs, they're all on each and every individual. Ner Chanukah is different. Ishu Beiso means it's on the bias. What do I mean when I say it's on the bias? So once again, I have a disagreement with the Pnei Yeshua and the Sfas Emes. The Pnei Yeshua and the Sfas Emes both say Ner Isha Beisoy means it's not on the individual, it's on the bias. But their understanding is on the bias, on the house, like mezuzah. My understanding is Ner Isha Beisoy is not on the house. It's on the people living in the house. We're all familiar with two categories of mitzvahs. Mitzvah shel hayochid and mitzvah shel hatzibur. Between the two, there's category number 3, which is not well known to people. Some mitzvahs rest on a group, not on the tzibur, on a collective group. And I'll give a few examples. Hakrovas HaKarbonos. Which kohanim have the chiyuv to be makriv every day korbanos tzibur and korbanos yochid? Kohanei HaMishmar. Shmuel Hanovi divided all the kohanim into Chov Daled Mishmaros, and every mishmar came twice a year for a week to Yerushalayim. And every mishmar was divided into 7 days of the week, and those are called the Beis Av. The koyanim of the Beis Av, it is their responsibility to bring all the karbonos shel oisei hayoim. No individual kohen has the chiyuv to be makriv karbonos. But all the koyanim of the Beis Av bear collective responsibility. One of them or some of them need to be makriv karbonos. And if a korban was not brought, they all bear responsibility. If some of them took care of the karbonos, and Ploiner or Almoini, Reuven v'Shimon did not, they have no aveira. They all bear responsibility. The mitzvah rests upon a collective group. Kohen Mishma. And the same as Achilas Kochim. Every day there was Achilas Kochim. Kodshe Kudishim Lechatas, Kudishim Kalim, Hanacholim Lekoyanim. Who has the chiyuv of Achilas Kochim? The same group, Kohenei Beis Av, that has the chiyuv of Akoros Karbonos. Is this concept only found in Kochim? No, we find it by other mitzvahs. An example, Yibum v'chalitza. When a person passes away and he left no children, there's a chiyuv of Yibum or chalitza. Who has that chiyuv? The brothers. Unlike Achilas Kochim and Akrovas Karbonos, in which all the Kohanim could take part, theoretically they don't need to, but they could, Yibam v'chalitza is only one. But who was the one? They decide. Lechatchila, the oldest. If he declines, we go to the next. If he declines, we go to number 3. But these mitzvahs, Yibam v'chalitza, rest on a collective, not on any individual. If there are 5 brothers, all 5 bear responsibility. One of you needs to be Mekayim the mitzvah. You can't share it amongst all of you. Only one. But which one? You need to decide. If no one does it, you all bear responsibility. If one does it, all the others weren't yoitze yedei chayvosam, but rather nifteru mechiyuvam. Lo sheyach lomar yatsu yedei chovotan, because they never had a chiyuv. It is only when a person has a chiyuv, somebody else could be moitziya yedei chayvosoi. But there was never an individual chiyuv on any of them. Therefore, when one is makayim the mitzvah, all the other are exempt. It's not that they were yoitze. So this is a concept we find by Achilas Kochim, by Akrovas Karbonos, by Yibum v'chalitza. And I come back to Ner Chanukah. So the Lashon of Chazal is Ner ish ubeisoi. I remember only one other source in which we find the concept of ish ubeisoi. I'll be presently surprised if anybody remembers what I mean. The first posuk in Chumash Shemos, Eis Yaakov ish ubeisoi ba'u. What does ish ubeisoi, Eis Yaakov ish ubeisoi ba'u? Did they carry their houses on their shoulders? Did they come with houses? No. Ish ubeisoi means each of them with his family. And that is ish ubeisoi. So the way I understand it, Mitzvahs Chanukah Ner ish ubeisoi means this mitzvah maybe is not on the individual at all. It is on a collective group. Who is that group? Usually family, but not necessarily family. The residents, the dwellers, the ones that live in this bayis. Usually they're related, but not always. You know, Yeshiva Buchim rent apartments in Yerushalayim, thousands of them. People living together in the same house bear a collective responsibility that on the door, outside their door, there needs to be an Ner Chanukah. Who is mechuyev? All together. If one of them lights, that's for all of them. If none of them lights, they all were mevatel a mitzvah. So that is one way to understand Ner ish ubeisoi. Not on the house like a mezuzah, the understanding of the Pnei Yeshua and the Svasemis, but rather, I brought a few examples. sometimes a mitzvah is not on the individual, but on a group of people. What defines the group? In every case, a different definition. When it comes to Kodshim, Kohanei Beis Av, Shenigba L'Yidei Shmuel Hanavi, Chov Daled Mishmaros. When it comes to Yibam V'Chalitza, it is the brothers of the deceased. When it comes to Ner Chanukah, it is the people that live in this house. They bear responsibility that one of them needs to light. If he lights, he doesn't need to be mechaven to be moitzi all the others, because the concept of lahoitzi yedei chayvosai is only when there's a chiyuv on the individual. The others aren't mechuyev. If one lights, kulam nifteru midei chiyuvam, lo sheyatzu yedei chovatam, ela nifteru midei chiyuvam. And I think that is the machlokes, the Rambam and the Rama. So I'm coming back to the Rambam that we read just half hour ago when we started the Shiur. We started the Shiur with the Rambam, and I'm just going to go over the Rambam again, and that's the very first halacha, Perek Daled Mehilchas Chanukah. Kameneros Madlik, Mitzvosa, Sheyeh Kol Bayis Ubayis Madlik Ner Echad. הלשון הזה כל כך ברור בעיניי. What is the gather? Mitzvosa, Sheyeh Kol Bayis Ubayis Madlik Ner Echad. It is clear as daylight in the shit of the Rambam. It's not under the individual. Mitzvosa, Sheyeh Kol Bayis Ubayis Madlik Ner Echad. Bein shoyu anshe bayis merubim, bein shelo heya ba'el odam echad. Doesn't matter how many people are in the house, the mitzvah is on the bayis. And it is clear to me, not the house, but the household, the people living in the house. So the Rambam's opinion is, Sheyeh kol bayis ubayis madlik ner echad. The Rama, Tufresh Ayin Zayin. There's a machlokes between the Beis Yosef and the Rama. And it starts off with the Rishonim, Gedolei Ashkenaz, Trumas Hadeshen and Maharil. Trumas Hadeshen and Maharil were the fathers of Minhagei Ashkenaz. And almost Kol Divrei Harama quotes the Trumas Hadeshen and the Maharil. Both the Trumas Hadeshen and the Maharil, Trumas Hadeshen Sima Kuf Aleph, Maharil Behilchas Chanukah, say, Achsanai shemadliken olav bebeisai shepotom in Chanukah. But if he wishes to be madlik in Chanukah wherever he is, he's a guest, he's away from home. Madliken olav bebeisai is potom in Chanukah. But if he wishes, he could be madlik with a bracha. The Tumas Hadeshen says, just like mahadrim shemadlikim ne'ela kol achad v'achad. Misha Madlikin Ola Bebeisai is no different than Mahadran. So even though Nerisha Beisai, but a Mahadran Madlikin Ela Kol Echad Ve'echad. So just like, even though one of us already was Madlik Ner Chanukah, we all could do the same. So it is clear in the Trumas Hadeshen, HaMahadran Shemadlikin Ela Kol Echad Ve'echad, not pshat like the Rambam, Madlik Neirois Keminyan Anshe Beisoi. But the Tumas Hadeshen's opinion is, Ner Kol Echad V'Echad, each of them lights his own ner. And the Tumas Hadeshen writes, Achsanai is no different than Mahadran. They all were Yaitza with the first, but nevertheless, they could light. Why is that? The Maril says, because if they want to light on their own, they were mechaven not to be yoitza with the first one that lit Ner Chanukah. So it is clear in the Maharil that the Pshat Ner Shebeisai is not on the collective. No, not like the Rambam. It's a mitzvah on each and every individual, just like all the other mitzvahs of Yom Tovim and Shabbos. However, one could be moitzi all the others. But he needs to have kavanah to be moitzi them, and they need to have kavanah to be yoitzi with him. And that is the explanation of the Maril, Madlikim Ner Kol Achad V'Achad. Each of them prefers to be Mekayim the mitzvah on his own, and that is in a way similar to mitzvah b'yoysim b'shluchai. It is in a way similar to Shemaya Ka'ina. I could be yoytza with him, but I prefer to daven myself. I could be yoytza with a shliach, but I prefer to do the mitzvah myself. I could be yoytza with my friend that we live together, but I want to be madlik myself, and that's why I don't want to be yoytza with him. So it is clear from Tumas Hadeshin and the Maharil that Ner kol echad v'yechad is not pshat like the Rambam, that it's just a matter how many neiris we're going to be madlik. No. Pshat in Ner kol echad v'yechad is Ner shebeisa is not on the collective, lo kedivrei Rambam, eina mitzvah al habayit, ela al hayechidim, and Ner shebeisa is pshat, one could be moitzi all the others if they wish to do so. But if they want to be madlik themselves, then they're madlik themselves, and therefore they could make a brocha. The Beis Yosef is Siman Tov Resh Ayin Zayin rejects the Tumas Hadeshin, and he says an Aksanai can't make a brocha because madlikin olav bebeisoi. So the Beis Yosef follows the Rambam. There's no such a thing you don't want to be yoytze. You don't need to be yoytze. When one kohen was makar of all the karbonis, could the other kohen object? I mean, he's not moitzi you. It's over. They did the mitzvah. So if the Beis Yosef says an achsanai cannot make a brocha, he follows the Rambam. The Ramo Paskins and Achsanai could make a brocha because he doesn't want to be yoytze with another. He follows the Maril. And therefore, Beis Yosef Rambam L'shitosai, don't go so far to Hilchas Mila, Hilchas Chanukah. And the fundamental machlokes is, what is the geder of Ner Ish Ubeisai? In Rambam it's clear that the mitzvah is ala bayis. Sheyeh kol bayis ubayis madlik ner echad. And therefore, l'shitosoi, one doesn't need to be moitze the others. And there's no such a thing, I was mechav and I don't want to be yoitze, I want to do it myself. There's no such a thing. You don't need to be yoitze. If one late, all the others are poto. And therefore, the Rambam says, what's the point of Ner kol echad v'yechad? Pshat cannot be like mitzvah b'yoysim b'shluchai. No, mitzvah b'yoysim b'shluchai is when you have a chiyuv. You could be yoytze with him, or you could be yoytze yourself. Shemei HaKohen is when you have a chiyuv. You could be yoytze with him, or you could be yoytze yourself. But Ner shebeisa is a different concept. And therefore the Rambam says, what's the Hidur? Ribui haneiros. Both Hidurim, according to Rambam, are just about ribui haneiros. That's the opinion of the Rambam. One ner is a mitzvah, toivim hashnayim en echad, v'toivim hashloishim en hashnayim. The more the merrier, the more the better. The more neiros, greater pesum and issa. As there's one little candle in the window, many passerbys won't even notice it. But if there are 50 candles in the window, you're going to see it from a mile away. Yosef Persum and Issa. So according to the Rambam, Ner kol echad v'yechad, and I come back to the lotion of the Rambam, Madlek neros keminyan anshei beisai. Just about a lot of neros. That is the Hidur. And in my opinion, lo kedivrei agris, the Rambam would have no objection if everyone wants to light his own ner. Why not? Doesn't make a difference. There's no need. But I don't think the Rambam would have an objection. And the father says, okay, I have 10 kids, so I need to light 12 neiros for me, for wife, for my children. But if the kids want to light themselves, go ahead. The Rambam has no objection. But that is not the mahus. According to the Ramo, following the Tumas Hadeshin and the Marir, it is all about mitzvah b'yoysim b'shlochei. It's all about, I want to do the mitzvah myself, and therefore my kavanah is not to be yoytze with him. And then I have a chiyuv gomer, and I can make a bracha. According to the Rambam, you can't make a bracha. But the Rambam would have no objection if everybody wants to light his own candle, gesundheit. But according to the Rambam, that's not the essence of the Hidur. And therefore, madlik neros keminyan anshe beisoi. But then the question is, what is the Hidur of minyan anshe beisoi? Is there any kesher between Ner Chanukah and Idud hayiluda? What's the point keminyan anshe beisoi? I think according to the Rambam, there are so many sugyas, primarily in Masechet Brochas and in Masechet Megillah. Yud ches brochas shel tfilas amida keneged ma. Sheva brochas and Shabbos keneged ma. And the Gemara says, Shalosh brochos, berchas hamazon keneged ma. Keneged Moshe Aaron, keneged Torah Nevi'im v'Ksuvim, Kohanim Leviim v'Yisrael. It's just keneged ma. The fundamental hidurim, according to the Rambam, is the ribui haneiros. But Chazal never say stam. Tarbu b'neirot. Kama. Keneged anshe beisoi. Ki keneged yom ha'manachnosim. Ner Shabbos. How many candles do we light Ner Shabbos? 2. Why 2? Minimum 2. The 2 rights. Echad keneged shomer. Zochav keneged shomer. Keneged ma. So the Hidur of Ner Chanukah, La'avonosi, according to the Rambam, Ribi Aneros. There's a machlokes between the Ksav Sofer and Rav Shach and Avi Ezri. What does a person do? Mahadran mina mahadran. 6th night of Chanukah, he realizes he only has 5 Neiros. What does he do? It's the 6th night. Yesterday night he already lit 5. Does he light 5 again? The Ksav Sofer says, yes. If you don't have 6, light 5. Rav Shach says, no. 5 means nothing. It's either Neresh Beisoi 1 or Keneged Yom HaNachnosim. But 5 doesn't make sense. And I say, of course the Ksav Sofer is right. 5 is more than 1. Well, why not light 5? So I don't have exactly Keneged Yom HaNachnosim. But it's all about Laharbois B'neiros. Same question would be if a person has 10 kids and he only has 8 Neiros. According to Ksav Sofer says, why not? Who are the 2 kids that will be left out? The father says, Kindalach. Nobody is left out. I have 10 kids, I light 8 Neiros. You could all decide which net is yours, which net is yours. Doesn't matter. According to Rav Shach, no. It's either Keminyan Anshe Beisoi or Neresh Beisoi. And I said, but it's all about the Harabis B'neiros. If you don't have 10, light 9. If you don't have 9, light 8. Toiv Meshnayim and Echad. So Rani is daiti, the Ramo and the Rambam. The fundamental machlokes is, how do we understand Neresh Beisoi? And dependent of our understanding Neresh Beisoi, we have 2 different interpretations of Ner L'Kol Echad V'Echad. Is Ner L'Kol Echad V'Echad Keminyan Anshe Beisoi? Or is it that each individual wants to be Mekayim his mitzvah? And there's a very pushta nafkamina lahalacha. According to the Rambam, Ner L'Kol Echad V'Echad includes a baby that was born yesterday. Boys and girls, the Rambam writes, Echad Anoshim ve'Echad Noshim. The minig, according to the Ramo, is boys light. The minig was never that girls light. Little girls do light because, it's chibur of mitzvah. But the minhag is that grown girls or women don't light. The wife doesn't light. The husband lights. But according to the Rambam, the husband needs to light a ner for each individual, for his wife, for his little baby girls. Keminyan Anshe Beisoi. That is different according to the Rama. So, as I said, Ledati, the Rambam would have no kpeda. If you all want to light, why not? There's no kpeda, they shouldn't, but that is not the essence of ner lekol echad v'yechad. Ner lekol echad v'yis k'minyan anshe, and it is all about ribui haneros, kach ner la'anius daiti, bebiur, the minig of the Ramah against the minig of the Rambam. And I don't even want to call it a big machloikis, because ledati, according to the Ramah, the kpeda is, it should light, because that is the Hidur according to the Ramah. The Rambam would have no objection, but according to the Rambam, that is not the mahus. That's not the essence of the Hidur. The essence of the Hidur is laharbot beneirot. It seems to be a huge chiddush that the Hidur is laharbois beneiros, but it's also obvious from Chidush Haran. The Chidush Haran asks, why is Mahadran Mina Mahadran a greater Hidur than Mahadran? Why? According to the Ramah, I don't understand the question. Mahadran and Mahadran Mina Mahadran are two different Hidurim in nature. Mahadran is like mitzvah bo yoyse me b'shluchai. I don't want to be yoytze with someone else. I prefer doing the mitzvah on my own. What is Mahadran and a Mahadran? Mahadran and a Mahadran wants to stress al yidei minyan haneros, the continuity of the nes. Not only one day, but two. Not only two, but three. Not only 7, but 8. So obviously, if one little pach shemen could light 8 times as much as nature would permit, it's a greater nes than 7 times or 6 times or 2 times. So mahadran mina mahadran moise v'hoilach or poiches v'hoilach is a hidur in pirsumei nisa. We want to indicate that the nes was nimshach shmoini yomim. And that is why it is a more important hidur than the hidur of everybody lighting his own ner. But the Chidush Haran asks, why is the Mahadran greater than Mahadran? And his answer is very surprising. And he says, because ultimately Mahadran Mina Mahadran will light more candles than most Mahadran. I don't think that would be true today, Baruch Hashem, in our society. You know, every day people come to me, they have 5 kids, they have 6 kids, and they want to do IVF, to have more children. And I say, Rabbeinu Shalom, you have a big family. You have 5 children, and every other society in the world has such a huge family. How are you going to take care of 5 children? Baruch Hashem, in our society, people want to have more kids. And we have families of 8 children, 9 children, 10 children, more than 10 children, Bili Ayin Hara. So my granddaughter got married just 2 weeks ago, right before I left to Chutz La'aretz. And our Mechatonim, Baruch Hashem, have 17 children. And the Mechutna is one of 19 children. This is huge families and unbelievable, happy children, healthy in body and soul, accomplished, nisim. So I think in our society today, we would say that ner lekol echad v'yechad, according to Rambam, is a bigger hidur than moise v'hoilach, unless moise v'hoilach is on top of ner lekol echad v'yechad, according to the Rambam. But the Chidush Haran writes, why is Mahadran and Mahadran greater than Mahadran? Because they like more neiros. So it is clear from the Chidush Haran that the hidur is ribuy neiros, and the one that lights more neiros has a greater mitzvah than the one that lights less neiros. And that, ledati, is Shittus HaRambam. So today we had 2 different approaches to understand the difference between the Ramah and the Rambam, the Brisker Rav, which is huge, but what appeals to me more, that Lishitosam from Hilchas Chanukah Gufa, and the question is how we understand Ner Kol Echad V'Echad, and that depends how we understand Ner Ish Ubeisai. So today we dealt with the mitzvah of Hadlokas Ner Chanukah in its 3 different forms. Ner Ish Ubeisai, כל אחד ויחד, מויסה והוילך. What is the essence of Chanukah? It's interesting that in the tefillah of Alanissim, we don't mention the Nes of Pach HaShemen. We don't mention the mitzvah, but rather, Hedliku neres b'chatzos kodshecho, v'kavu shmoinis yemei Chanukah elu lahoidois ulahalel. There's another gersa, v'kavu shmoinis yemei Chanukah elu bahalel v'hoidoya. The mitzvah is adlukas haner. That's persum anissa. But the essence, the mahus, is halal v'hoidoya. I don't know whether you are all aware. Where does the Rambam write all the halachas of halal? Sholosh Regolem, Rosh Chodesh, all the halachas of halal. Where does the Rambam write these halachas? First perek of Hilchas Chanukah. Chanukah has two prokim. Perek Aleph Beis is Dinei Purim v'Megillah. Perek Gimel Daled is Hilchas Chanukah. It's interesting. The first perek in Hilchas Chanukah is not about Adlukas Haner. All the dinam of halal. Not only halal of Chanukah, all the general dinam of halal. And with a little drop of humor, many times I said, if the Rambam would turn to me, and the Rambam would say, Kvoid Rabbeinu Aminchas Osha, I don't need your help in Birur Halacha. You're a great guy, but I really don't need your help in dictating halacha. I decided, and I have an opinion, in every halacha that is relevant to a yid. And I codified Kol HaTorah Kulo, all the Taryag mitzvahs, and the Rambam was the only one, no one before or after, to codify and to pasken Kol HaTorah Kulo. The Rif before the Rambam, the Tur after the Rambam, only dealt with mitzvot hanoagot bizman hazeh. The Rambam was the only one that took upon himself all the Taryag mitzvahs, all Shishus Sidra Mishnah, Zruim, Kachem, Taharas, he left nothing out. And he forged an opinion in every shaila, in every halacha. And the Rambam would also tell me, I also decided, and that is a huge manifestation of the Rambam's genius, I decided that all the Torah and all the halachas fit into 14 categories. And those are the 14 categories of the Yad HaChazokah. And all the halachas and all the Taryag mitzvahs fit into one of these 14 categories. And those are the Yud Aleph Tzvom of Yad HaChazokah. I just want you to do some technical work for me. Here are the halachas, here are the categories, just fit in which halacha goes where. The Rambam would ask me to help him in that aspect. It is clear to me that I would put all the halachas of halal in Sefer Ahava. Somewhere between Kriya Shema and Tefillah and Mea Brochas B'Kol Yoim, I would fit in halal. That's what I would think. And that is why the Rambam didn't ask me to do it. Because the Rambam decided differently. And the Rambam put all the halachas of halal in Hilchas Chanukah in Sefer Zmanim, not in Sefer Ahava. And this proves that the essence of Chanukah, the essence is not Adlukas Haner. Adlukas Haner is Pesum Anissa, but the essence is V'kavu shmoinis yemei Chanukah elu lahoidois ulahalal. These are days of halal v'hoidoya. So the famous kasha of the Bes Yosef, why do we have 8 days of Chanukah? The nes was only 7 days. And I remember as a young child, many, many years ago, more than 60 years ago, I was always fascinated by my father's huge bookshelf in Borough Park. That bookshelf was about 5% of the Sforim I have today. But as a little boy, to me it looked huge. And I loved to look at the Sforim, even though I didn't understand a word. I was a little boy. And there was one sefer that fascinated me more than all the others. It was a little blue sefer. When my father passed away, I looked for that sefer, but I didn't find it, get lost somewhere, because to me it was nostalgic. A little blue sefer called Ner Lameya, 100 tirutzim on the kasha of the Beis Yosef. And as a little boy, I wondered, how could there be 100 tirutzim on one kasha? How could that be? I didn't get it. Recently, my Eniklich showed me a sefer, 700 tirutzim of the kasha of the Beis Yosef. No, 700 tirutzim on one kasha. Probably a few hundred don't make much sense, but anyway. So the famous kasha of the Beis Yosef, why are there 8 days of Chanukah if the nes was only 7 days? Minchas Osher Chelik Beis, Siman Aleph, the first Siman of Chanukah, I wrote a mahalach on this kasha, and I think that is the best of all the 700. But that's not for today. But one of the terutzim that has most appealed to me, the Ramban writes in the end of Parshas Boy, and this is a very well-known Ramban. I quoted it 1,000 times, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give me the ability to quote it many more times to come. The Ramban writes, why is it important that we remember the super miraculous events of yore? Yetzias Mitzrayim. Why is it so important? And the Ramban writes, Min hanisim hagedolim v'hamevrsomim, or the moide benisim hanestorim, sheheim yesod kol haTorah kulo. When we remember the supernatural events, the really miraculous one, that have no explanation in Teva, in nature, we will learn to appreciate the miracles of concealment, the everyday miracles, the miracle of life. The miracle of life which is greater than any other miracle. And it's a miracle not 1 day, not 2 days, not 8 days, but when you realize the miraculous events, hopefully we will appreciate the day-to-day miracles. And that is most important. Sheheim yesod kol haTorah kulo, writes the Ramban. So I say the first 7 days are 7 days of nes. The 8th day is before you say goodbye to Chanukah. This is for the Nisim HaNistorim. This is the nes of Teva. You remember the Gemara at the end of Masechet Tanis? The daughter of Reb Chanina ben Dosa prepares Neiras Shabbos, and she wants to be Madlik Neiras Shabbos. Nothing happens. And to her horror, she realizes that it's not oil, it's vinegar. And we don't have any oil. And she comes crying to her father, Abba, we don't have Neiras Shabbos. How does he respond? Biti, ma ichpas lach? Mi shomer Hashem and v'yadlik, yoim alachem es v'yadlik. And lo and behold, she lights, and it burns beautifully. What an ace. Anybody that knows Reb Chanina ben Dosa is not nespoiled from Nisim, He was the miracle, he was the wonder man. He had Nisim every day. What we need to be nespoiled is the sprach. He tells his daughter, "Man tayr kind, is there any difference between oil and vinegar to HaKadosh Baruch Hu?" Of course there's a difference. Oil is inflammable. Vinegar is not. But Reb Chanina ben Dosa asked his daughter, and why is that? Because that's Teva. Who dictated Teva? Rabbeinu Shalom. I believe that Rabbeinu Shalom will decide now that in your little Ner Shabbos, in our little home, vinegar will be inflatable, just like oil. It's the same. It's the same, he tells his daughter. My ichpas lach. Misha omer l'shemen v'yadlik, yoim alachaymes v'yadlik. To HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's all the same. To HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there's no difference at all between natural and supernatural. To HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there's no difference between Kriyas Yam Suf and seeing the beauty of the ocean every day. It's all the same to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I have a beautiful pshat, liyosed loivoi, v'mola ha'oretz deus Hashem k'mayim liyam mechasim. There will be no need for Kriyas Yamsef. We will all witness the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, kasher mayim liyam mechasim. There will be no need for miracles. And we will realize that nature and miracle, it's all the same. It's all Ritzon Hashem. So Reb Chanina ben Doisa, in his simplicity, tells his daughter, why are you crying? So we don't have oil, we have vinegar. But I believe HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want you to cry. And he wants us to have Ner Shabbos. So right now vinegar will be inflammable like oil. Why not? Does it make a difference to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? So the first 7 Eidos of Chanukah are keneged the nes of Chanukah. B'nei bino, yemei shemoino, kavo, shiur iranonim. After lighting 7 Eidos, l'shem hanes, the 8th Eid is shemen. Shemen, chometz, shemen, doesn't make a difference. Everything is miracles. Our life is a miracle. The greatest miracle of all. And therefore, Chanukah are days of Hallel v'hoidoya. And that is why HaKadosh Baruch Hu made this nes. They should realize that the greatest nes was the victory in war. Tmayim b'te'orim, rabim yad miatim, geborim b'yad chaloshim. Everything is a miracle. Our life is a miracle. And therefore, Yemei Chanukah are Yemei Hallel v'hoidoya. V'kavu shmoinis Yemei Chanukah eila lahoidois ulahallel. And the Ramban writes in that very same paragraph at the end of Parshas Boi, Tachles hayetzira harishono, ve'ein le'el elyon chefetz betachtoinim, ki im sheyeda ha'adam v'yodeh le'eloikov shebaroi. So many svarim were written about Tachles habriya. The philosophers have their way and the Kabbalists have their way. What is the world all about? Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu create the world? Why did he choose us? And according to the Ramban, it's so simple. One line. Tachlis hayetzira harishayna, ve'ein le'el elyon chefetz betachtoinim, ki im sheyeda ha'odam v'yodeh le'elokav shebra'o. 2 things. Sheyeda v'sheyodeh. Recognize and give thanks. Did anybody say this before the Ramban? I think so. The Novi Yeshayahu, Perek Mem Gimel, Amzu yotzarti li, tihilosi yisaperu. And Rashi writes, Amzu yotzarti li, kedei shitilosi. That's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu chose us. We are the ones to sing the praise of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to offer gratitude. I shared this thought many times because it's relatively new to me and it just occurred to me a few months ago. And I find it very inspiring. What is the first thing we say every day in the morning? Moidani lefonecho melech chai v'kaim shechzartu b'nishmosi b'chemlo rabo emunasecho selo. What does moida ani mean? In Lashon Kodesh, modeh means 2 things: admission and gratitude. Probably most of you sometime learned the sugya of Moida b'miktsas, Bov Metzia Dav Gimel, Ksub B'Siyut Ches, Git Nun Aleph, many other sources. Moida b'miktsas is not saying thank you. He's in denial. He denies 50% of your claim. So what does Moida b'miktsas mean? He admits 50%. So Moida could mean hoda'ah or hodaya. Admission, recognition, or gratitude. So what do we mean when we say every day in the morning, Moida ni lefonecho zartu b'nishmosi? It is clear to me that we mean both. Why do I think so? Because according to the Gemara, the Rambam, the Tur, and the Shulchan Aruch and Siman Mem Vav Orach Chaim, when you open your eyes in the morning, what is the first thing you're supposed to say? Who remembers? Not Moidani. Moidani is nowhere to be found in Chazal or the Rambam or the Torah Shulchan Aruch. The very earliest source to the Nusach of Moidani Lefonecha was Seder Hayom Shel Moshe ben Mochio. According to the Gemara, Rambam, Tur, Shulchan Aruch, when you open your eyes, you're supposed to say, Elokai neshama shenotato bi. Why don't we do so? The Tur writes in the name of the Rosh because we don't want to be Moitzi Shem Shemayim before Natilas Yadayim. And that is why we say Moidani. So Moidani must be an abbreviation of Elokai neshama. Otherwise, we're going against Chazal. What do we say in Elokai neshama? Elokai. Neshama shenotato bi toheroi, atu baroso, atu yotzarto, atu nefachto bi. That is before giving thanks. That is recognition. Atu baroso, atu yotzarto, atu nefachto bi. And only then do we go on. Kol zman shaneshama bikirbi, moidani lefonecha. So when you get up every day in the morning and you say Moidani, you need to have two different kavanas. You could say it twice. It's not a brocha levatol. But you don't need to say it twice. But you need to bear in mind. First is recognition. I opened my eyes this morning and I don't take it for granted. Many people go to sleep by night and they don't wake up in the morning. And if I open my eyes this morning, it is because you decided to give me another day. You decided that I deserve one more day. And that is why I thank you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So when you say Moida'ani, first, it's admission, it's recognition. Atu barosa, atu yatzarta, atu nefachto bi. And that is why I thank you, Hashem. And if that is the way you get up in the morning and you say, thank you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, for giving me one day, I think you're going to make that day meaningful. You're going to make that day meaningful. If this is what you feel every day in the morning when you get up, it is you that decided to give me another day. You're going to see to it that you're not going to waste this day. You're going to make something out of it. Sheyeda ha'odam v'yodeh le'elikav sheberoi. Sheyeda, recognition. Sheyodeh, and that is gratitude. And that is what Chanukah is all about. Kavish moinis yemei Chanukah elo, lahoidois o lahalel l'shimcha godelu. That is our tafkid, and that is tachlas abriya. So let us thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu for every day and for every moment. Al kol nashima v'nashim et ha'halaliyah. So tonight we lit the first net of Chanukah, and these neiros shine with the Or HaGonuz. We should be Zercha B'Kora B'Yameinu to see the Or Shenignaz Ka'or Shivas Yemei Bereshis, and we should be Zercha to see the Kohen Gadol Meitiv Umadlek Es Aneiros B'Menoiros Amoyer B'Mehero V'Yomeinu Amen.